This is Keith Heller from Cops Corrections Videos. If you like my videos, please hit the red subscribe button. Today I'd like to talk about administration and top-heavy administrations. In Wisconsin, our rank structure is you get out of the academy, you're an Officer 1. You remain in that status for 2 years, then you're automatically elevated to Officer 2. You can test to become a sergeant, then lieutenant, then captain, and security director. Security directors will usually go from there to becoming a deputy warden and eventually a warden. Now in Wisconsin, at our major institutions, we have a warden, we have a deputy warden, a security director, business manager, other things that are non-concerned with security, but that's about it. I was recently at an institution in another state, and their levels of administration were astounding to me. They had a warden, they had a chief deputy warden, they had 4 associate wardens, then they had 5 or 6 captains. Now captains there aren't what captains are in Wisconsin. As a captain in Wisconsin, when I went into work, I was a shift commander. We also had a training captain, we had an administrative captain, and we had a segregation captain. Now those were the pretty people. Those were the ones that worked 8 to 4, 5 days a week, weekends and holidays off. We also had shift commanders and shift lieutenants, assistant commanders. Now those were the floating positions. Those were the ones that worked 6 days on, 2 off, 6 on, 2 off. A rotating schedule. You weren't guaranteed off on a holiday unless you had that as your day off or you had enough seniority to get it as vacation. Now it worked out good. When I went in, I was shift commander, which meant I was in charge of running the shift. I wasn't in charge of running the segregation building. I wasn't in charge of training. I wasn't in charge of scheduling for other supervisors. I was in charge of the shift, the entire shift. The facility I worked at had 32 housing units, 1,500 inmates, approximately 120 officers, a 50-bed hospital unit, and myself and my assistant shift commander were the ones that were in charge of running our shift for those 8 hours. Now I contrast that to the prison that I visited. Now it was a large prison. I believe they had around 2,000 inmates. I'm not sure of how many housing units they had, but there their captains were all 8 to 4, 5-day-a-week jobs. Captains there were basically, for lack of a better term, paper pushers. They administered discipline to other officers. They oversaw the operations of a specific complex, but they didn't oversee operations of the entire prison. One of the things that kind of bothered me about this situation was in talking to some of the officers, I asked them about their command structure, and a couple of them said, I don't even know who my captain is this week. Well, you know what? I can guarantee you that everybody that was on my shift knew who their captain was. They knew who their lieutenant was, whether I was on first shift, second shift, or third shift. We all complain about administration being top heavy. You've got to consider what you have. In Wisconsin, we have the warden, which is in charge of everything. We have the deputy warden who steps in if something happens to the warden, and it's almost like a deputy warden position to me, unfortunately, is almost like the vice president of the United States. They really don't do much. They have a title, but nobody can figure out exactly what they do. Then you have the security director. A security director is in charge of all the supervisors. They're in charge of enforcing policies and procedures. They're in charge of adopting policies and procedures. From there you have the captains. Now when I started, being a captain was a career goal in and of itself. Unfortunately, over time, that has changed. Now for too many captains, at least in the Wisconsin system, being a captain is not a career goal. It's merely a step on the career the ladder for their career. It's another step to get closer to security director. The unfortunate part about that is, and I can understand that, it's good taking the progression from lieutenant to captain to security director and working your way up. That's great, but the unfortunate part is too many captains are so interested in that next step on the career ladder that they aren't doing their job as a captain. Now that doesn't mean that they're not able to do their job as a captain, but they're so looking forward to taking that next step that often they take shortcuts, or it basically will bend over and do anything that the upper administration tells them to without question or without regard, as how it's going to affect the people working under them. You know, all institutions are going to complain. Line officers, whether they're blue shirts, you know, regardless of what color uniform they wear, they're going to complain about upper administration. I did it. I complained about upper administration. But you know, we all have a function. Upper administration is there for a reason, just as captains, lieutenants, sergeants, and officers are there for a reason. We have to consider those reasons, but we have to also consider how much is too much. The old adage, and I don't mean to offend anybody with this, is too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Unfortunately, it seems too many of our systems and corrections are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Until next time, this is Keith Helwig from Cops Corrections Videos. Stay safe and watch your back.